Hey, hello, howdy, how you doing? You like zombies? Cool. You like survival games? Awesome. You like combining the two? Alright, go change your pants. Welcome to Terminus, a roguelike zombie survival game that answers the question, what if Project Zomboid somehow had a half of the graphics and a complete story? Kinda. Think Neo Scav with zombies instead of furries. That pique your interest? Good. Terminus is a turn-based zombie survival game, which I know sounds scary, but shut up and listen. The map is procedurally generated. It's got a shit ton of customization and things to unlock with each run. It's got crafting, cooking, scavenging, and skills to level, which is always going to be my favorite thing to do. There's also other survivors that you can find and talk to, which is something that a certain game is still struggling with. Anyway, your progression carries over between runs, and as of today, it's officially releasing out of early access and offering 5 total endings. Longplay Studios was kind enough to sponsor today's video, which means I get to berate you for I don't know, however long this video ends up being, and I get paid to do it. How exciting. Capitalism rocks. Okay, real quick though, there's a couple things we need to be on the same page for before the start of this video. 1. I'm going in blind. A few people reached out with guides and tips, and I wiped my ass with them because if we're not going to be authentic, then what's the f***ing point? 2. I don't know if it was the 3 monsters I drank this morning, or the power of autism that compelled me to do this, but I went for one of the hardest end goals I could think of, creating and distributing the vaccine. This video is brought to you by It is worth mentioning that, as of the time of recording, there are 0 guides on how to make the cure, so only the players that are part of the 0.7% actually know, which means we've got a lot to learn. You're given 3 professions to choose from at the start of the game, but more unlock as you play. For my first run, I chose the police officer because I too have a superiority complex and figured shooting first and asking questions later is probably the way to go in an apocalypse. For traits, I went with cigarette preference because I'm not a nerd. For difficulty, the entire video is going to be set to normal, which is the default. I'm not going for some crazy over-the-top difficulty here. Alternatively, there's a few scenarios that you can start with, as well as a full sandbox mode where you can customize literally every aspect of the game. My first run was entirely centered around simply learning the game and earning some trait points. If you don't remember what I said a minute ago, 1. Seek help, and 2. Leveling up and earning more points carries over between sessions, so the more you play, the better runs you'll be able to have later on. The game objective is to find and reach Terminus. You remember that place in The Walking Dead where they do the cannibal thing and Carol just blows up half the town? Yeah, that place. You even have to follow the railroad tracks too, which is a nice callback. So, to get started, everything you do costs AP, or action points. You regain some every turn, but literally every action costs them, hence the name. So walking may cost a few, searching the drawers will cost some, fighting zombies costs some, etc. After looting my starter home, I stepped outside to find my first zombie. Here's where the main difficulty of the game comes in. Every single move you do needs to be calculated. If not, you'll step outside like me, only to realize that you don't have enough AP to get to safety, which means the zombie gets to swing first, causing you to start bleeding. Luckily, I found a knife and was able to stab it in the head, giving me my first kill before heading back inside to craft a bandage, once again running out of AP and causing me to take more damage. I was able to bandage my injury, but it was already infected, which means I've got to figure out how to deal with that. With the starter home looted, I headed north to find and loot yet another house, killing another zombie in the process. By the time I'd moved to a third house, it was already nightfall. There's a cool mechanic here where if you fight zombies at night, your visibility is greatly reduced, so your chance of missing goes up. And you can't see how much health they have. This can be negated by using a flashlight or a lantern, but in this instance, we don't have any of those, so it's black. As it turns out, sleeping on a blood-soaked floor will actually allow you to start recovering from your infections. Shout out immune systems, I guess. It apparently takes multiple days to heal from an infection, so it's just something we'll need to keep an eye on along with my health. On the bright side though, I did manage to find a recipe book. Not sure if I'll have enough time to read it before I die, but at least I've got one for now. With what little time I had left in this life, I dripped myself out in a fanny pack and tote bag and continued on my way. I managed to stumble onto a grocery store where I dealt with my first special zombie, and by that I mean it wore a helmet just like me. killing it leveled me up, which gave me 3 traits to choose from, so I just chose Fast Learner. It was around this point that I noticed I was down to just 0.5 health and probably wouldn't survive another turn. I had some cigarettes, but no lighter, so I turned to my lukewarm beer before laying on the floor and preparing to die. But apparently, all Chester needed to do was take a catnap to fully recover from the infection. An insane stroke of luck, no doubt. I still had like no health, so I spent the night in the grocery store, taking most of the evening to craft a wooden spear before falling asleep on the floor again. I woke up before sunrise, but didn't feel like trying my luck in the dark, so I sat around reading that crafting book I'd grabbed the day before. It's actually pretty cool. Obviously it costs AP to read, but this book had 3 separate recipes in it, so you can choose to just keep reading and get all 3, or if there's a specific recipe you want, you can just read until you unlock that before moving on. This was my 3rd day here, and I feel like I was really starting to get the combat down. It's pretty simple, at least for now, but hitting the chest causes their arms to get torn off. Hitting their head will outright kill them, and hitting their legs turns them into a crawler, so all you need to do is then find 950 points for the mystery box and you'll be golden. In all seriousness though, if you take out a zombie's arms and legs, you can collect its head for 1 AP. No idea what it'll be used for, but I thought that was really cool. Looting the house turned up a radio and some antibiotics, along with the realization that I'm gonna need to find some food soon because I'm all out. I also found a sling bag and a Bible. The Bible is actually pretty OP and gives you 1 morale per AP. After waking up the next morning, I repaired the radio using a screwdriver I found on a dead zombie, and received the coordinates to Terminus. It's worth mentioning again that these change every time because every map is procedurally generated. Anyway, I'm starving to death, but I did manage to find a gun store. Who needs food when you have a rifle? Continuing west led me to a gas station where I found some food, along with a couple gas cans and a siphon tool. After finding a police station, I came into contact with my first survivor NPC, who I was able to trade with to acquire a crowbar. Since it was near sunset, I spent the night in the police station, crafting an animal trap and more weapons to pass the time. As I continued north, I made the mistake of trying to cover too much ground too quickly, causing me to fight several zombies in the darkness, and ending with this. Not bad for a first run, but I think we can do better. For my second run, I went with a soldier, since we're way better at killing zombies and actually managed to do pretty well at the start. Before ultimately ending the same as the first. Which brings us to our third attempt and the true run of the video. Meet Francis the Firefighter. He's got 4 strength, 3 health, 2 combat, and 3 dexterity. He can't see very well, but he can craft medium quality weapons and items, and considering that's what I spent most of my time on outside of moving, I spec'd heavily into that. It also means things like crafted spears have higher durability, which should help a ton. For traits, I had 2 points, so I went with Alcoholic and Smoker because I like to party. Now, a smarter player would have gotten comfortable reaching Terminus a few times, unlocking a few more professions, stacking some extra traits and all that, but I'm an idiot, so we're doing it this way. My goal was to spend the first few days looting and gathering supplies, before taking a more nomadic approach. I figure if I'm always moving, I'm always headed towards some type of clue. That being said, I did spend most of day 1 reading the books that I'd found in the first few houses, mainly because I got some recipe mags, a cooking pamphlet, and info about a nearby gun shop. I also found a street map which can be used to give information about unmarked places on the map in exchange for AP, which I thought was super OP. This will actually play a major factor in the developing story later on, but we'll keep this in our back pocket for now. And this continued into day 2 with me finding a pharmacy loaded with supplies, with the downside being the zombies don't like to let you sleep through the night. The next morning, I found a radio and a crude bow. Sadly, the radio won't help me since the goal isn't to find Terminus, and the crude bow is going to be good for like 2 shots before it disintegrates. I also found another NPC, chatted with them for a few hours to gain their trust, traded for another crowbar and a knife so I could finally craft my spears, and even recruited them to the cause. Now that I can control 2 characters, we can use Elena as a meat shield whenever we get into a sticky situation. I also learned how to make a hand crank generator, so if we find a gas station, we'll be in business. One cool component that I wasn't expecting is that characters can be in different locations on the map. They don't need to all be in the same spot, so I could, in theory, set up a base and keep Elena there while Francis goes out exploring. As we continued our journey, we came across an abandoned gun store, finding several pistols and a few attachments for a variety of weapons. We also started turning in our used books into makeshift armor. It's not great, but it's better than nothing, no doubt. Over the course of the next day, we moved northwest, finding a library and looting it for a plethora of books and magazines, including the ability to fly a helicopter. I'm sure that won't end horribly. Some of these books are incredibly useful though, like the Clean Attack one. You can obtain it 5 times and each book gives a 15% weapon condition decrease when attacking, meaning your weapons are 15% more durable. Again, that can stack 5 times up to 75%. There's also energy saving books, which can be acquired 5 times and decrease the amount of energy you lose each turn. This means that you can stay awake for longer periods of time instead of having to sleep so often. Unfortunately, the library is a big POI, which means there's always a few more zombies hanging around during the night, which is just a roundabout way of me saying, no one slept that night. Continuing west, we found a gas station with a generator out back. I've got a few cans of gas on me, so if we can find a car, we can use the fuel to power on the generator out back and then refuel at the pumps out front. That being said, we need to find a working vehicle first. Progress was slow, so I had Francis and Elena split up, with Francis finding a hardware store and Elena staying back to clear some debris. In the hardware store, Francis happened upon another survivor and spent the rest of the day chatting with them, while Elena spent the night in the gas station. Another day, another POI. Churches are useful if you have a Bible because it doubles the amount of morale you can earn by reading them, as long as you're inside the church itself. Other than that, there's no real benefit unless you're either 60 and wearing a white robe or a 7-year-old boy. Since Francis is neither of those, we'll keep it moving. Occasionally, you'll get a notification that new info is available on the radio. In this instance, I was told that a group left food and medicine in a house near Terminus today, along with the coordinates to that location. Naturally, those supplies are right next to a dangerous place POI, which means that area is no doubt overrun with zombies. We're just over 10 days into the run at this point, and for my best guess, the research facility should be near one of the dangerous places. So I decided to continue on with Elena and Francis working on their own. Francis will go to the point on the left, while Elena begins backtracking to the right. I'm not planning to get up to the dangerous places though, since I have those maps, so I can just scan the area around them to see if I'm right. Worst case, I'll be able to effectively draw out the entire map in the process. During this, I was able to find a pond in the park with Elena, but Francis has the fishing pole, so I just grabbed dirty water and kept it moving. The amount of zombie scaling is pretty obvious the closer you make it to the dangerous place POIs. Looking back at the last gas station, I think there were maybe 2 or 3 zombies, but in this one, there's 4 just by the pumps. All things considered, we were literally right beneath the marker, so it's to be expected. Once the area was seemingly cleared out, I began covering the windows of the gas station. It's not a great location to spend a night at, but it's as close as I can get to the dangerous place, which means it's the perfect spot to start scanning the map from. After spending the night on the floor of the gas station, I finally got to work. I had 0 success initially and started getting panicked. But after around 6 hours of searching, I managed to locate and mark the research center on the map. It's nearest to Francis, so the plan is to meet up at a house nearby and then travel to the research center together as a group. As luck would have it, the house I picked out at random on the map is actually fortified, which I thought was really cool. There's 3 options to choose from here, all of which rely on the trust level. If you offer to give help, they'll send you on a fetch quest for items, in this instance, bags, which will boost their trust level with you upon completion. It's the same concept as working with the random survivor NPCs, so the higher the value, the less of a trade penalty. It's the request option which is super cool to me though. It costs trust level to request items, but you can request things like an item or information, or my favorite, for them to enhance a weapon for you. I probably would have spent more time on it had I not just uncovered the location of the research center, but honestly, that's all my mind was on at this point. While that was going on, Elena learned the hard way that the train tracks are quite possibly the worst location to be in. After narrowly escaping to a park, we found our first vehicle of the playthrough. It's broken and needs a wrench to repair it, but luckily, I've got like 50 on me. The only problem? There's no direct path to the park. I've got to go all the way back to the fortified house, then run through 2 railroad sections, all before the sun sets in 5 hours. While Francis the firefighter made his way over to Elena, she passed the time by checking out the cooking options, boiling water, making some pasta, and a few cups of coffee. I do really like the cooking aspect of the game, and it's something I very much underutilized this run. I think in a future run, I'll do more of a long-term survival setup and see if I can focus on traps and fishing to make some higher quality meals that way. It started raining right after the sunset, so I just said f*** it and pushed through the railroad tracks, making it to Elena at around 2 a.m. As soon as I got to the park, I started working on repairing the truck. We're both cold and soaking wet, which means we're losing over 1 health per turn. We also haven't slept yet, which is lovely, so the focus was solely on repairing the truck as fast as possible. With the truck finally repaired, I tossed a bunch of the luggage into the bed, and then got to work purifying like 10 water bottles worth of water, before making a mean salad. Check out the stats on that thing. Driving the car is more of an instant teleport to a tile, but as long as the companions are surrounding the car, it'll pull all of them with you, which is really nice. We didn't have enough fuel to make it to the research facility, so I backtracked to that gas station from earlier and got to work securing the area and fixing up the generator to restore power to the fuel pumps. Once that generator was back online, I refueled all of my empty gas cans and got the car filled up in only 2 turns. And with that out of the way, it was back to a nearby house to rest for the night in hopes of healing Elena of her disease. Always wear protection, kids, even in the apocalypse. Who knew it only took one night of sleeping on the couch to full heal from an infectious disease? During our downtime, Francis got into some reading, though I still didn't manage to finish off any of the books before we were ready to move again. It wasn't until we'd woken up that we realized there was a whole other person just hanging out watching in the corner. After exchanging pleasantries with Adam22, we set off back to the gas station to retrieve the car. Now, instead of driving directly into the research center, I thought it'd be a better idea to set up shop right outside of it. That way, if we have any trouble and can't reach the car in time, we have a safe escape plan. Good thing I came here first though. There was debris blocking the path into the research center, so had we not figured that out here, we could have easily just been trapped. By the time we'd cleared out the house, it was already noon, so I decided to spend the night here and push into the research center tomorrow with the truck, keeping this path as a possible escape plan. You know it's gonna be bad when you wake up to see the house completely overrun with zombies, and we haven't even reached the facility yet. It took most of the morning to clear out the zombies hanging around the house, but we managed to reach the facility by noon and immediately got to work fighting our way inside. Initially, the west was too crowded, so we began pushing south, opting to use melee weapons instead of guns to avoid attracting half of the building's inhabitants over to us. By the time the sun had set, we'd only cleared 2 rooms. Luckily, we found a hallway to camp out in, using a flashlight once every few turns to locate and kill any zombies in the room with us, just kind of biding our time until daybreak. Eventually, though, we found a corner to sleep in, next to a set of stairs, so that got us through the first few hours before Elena woke up. I wasn't really sure what I was looking for at this point, so I split up Francis and Elena, sending Francis further west while Elena headed down the stairs. It's complete darkness down here, so I made a fire, and oh my god did that save my life. I was practically surrounded by zombies, but it also let me see an antigen extractor, which meant I'm on the right track. The room is massive and full of all these weird machines, but there's no power down here, so I'm not really sure how to do any of the steps for it. There's some synthesizer modules that are mounted, and others that aren't, and I'm sure I'll need to mount them, but the issue now is figuring out just how to do that. Just kidding, you can pick up the modules and place them on the different floor tiles, which automatically mounts them. There's 2 slots left, but no more machines down here, so they must be scattered throughout the facility. Is at least what I thought. I've also been collecting these research notes off of some dead zombies, so I read through them, and from my understanding, you need to grab heads off of the zombies and add them to the antigen extractor that's currently offline. As I was looting all of the cabinets, I found a recipe book to make a synthesizer module. We need 2 of them, and crafting them seemed like a better option than just blindly hunting for an alternative. As it turns out, it may be easier to just find these things after all. No idea how or where we'll find a bioreactor core, but at least we have the recipe. After some light scavenging, it was near sunset, so we retreated back down to the basement and passed the night huddling in a corner. By 2 p.m. on day 17, the research facility was fully cleared out. With no more zombies in the area, or at least no more immediate threats, I got to work scavenging the place for any additional research notes or really anything of value that could help me figure out what to do next. While I didn't find a bioreactor core, I did find a recipe for a hand crank generator which we could use to at least temporarily restore power. Looks like all I need are scrap plastic, scrap metal, and electric parts, all of which I believe can be found in this facility. After spending the day looting the remainder of the facility, I was 4 electronic parts short. Luckily for us though, we have a ton of junk lying around, so I just started disassembling all my spare gear and attachments, giving me enough to finally craft the damn thing. Now it's gotta be charged using AP, but if you go into the exchange items tab between 2 characters, you can spend both companions' AP on it, powering it up much faster than doing it solo. Maybe I was going about this wrong though, seeing as I just broke it while charging the thing. With the generator fully charged and no idea what to do with it, I turned back to the research notes. As it turns out, the military has spare bioreactor cores. I just need to find their location. A few more research notes in, and you're told that aluminum hydroxide and saline solution mixed with the antigens from the zombie heads are what's needed for the cure. These can be found all over the facility, so really we've got everything we need with the exception of power and the synthesizers. The next morning, I found a military vehicle parked outside with a bioreactor core in its trunk, along with most of the materials needed to craft another module. By the time I'd finished disassembling everything, I still needed 9 more scrap electronics. But then I remembered that fortified house from a few days ago. If I remember correctly, you could ask them to give you some spare parts. So I slept until morning, then hopped in the truck and headed back over to pay them a visit. After turning in 2 quests, we were up to trust level 10, which was enough to redeem 2 parts orders. giving me 6 electronic scraps along with a few other oddities. This is where scanning the map is really going to start paying off, as there's hardware and electronics stores, which we can loot to gather any spare materials we might need, such as electronic scrap. I still need one more metal sheet, and I have no idea where to find them, but I did notice that there's a military base in the top left corner of the map, so I set out in that direction, halting at the pharmacy just south of the checkpoint for the night. The military checkpoint was absolutely loaded with zombies. I'd say on par, if not a little more so than the research facility. On the bright side, we had a ton of weapons, so it made tearing through these guys just a little easier. Even with the excess in weapons though, sometimes brute force just wins. As the battle continued into the night, I got to use my first grenade, which was f***ing sweet. It just felt like every time we moved forward though, there were 10 more zombies waiting for us. After what felt like days, we managed to push through the checkpoint, reaching a pile of debris blocking our entrance to the military base. Admittedly, I might have overstepped here. The zombies' turn was just like a minute straight of them surrounding us. Like, goddamn, we're f***ed. The best plan I could come up with was to keep hopping back and forth and slowly picking the zombies off one or two at a time. I lost count of how many I'd killed, but it took literally all day to finish, and even then, there was still about 6 or 7 left when I called it for the night. I say that, but I continued this through the night and well into the next day. While Francis fought for his life, Elena was on a mission of her own, restocking our water supply since we were down to one last bottle. Once we were all filled up with water, I tried out fishing for a bit before heading back to the checkpoint. Want to see something crazy? This is some of the loot from all of the zombies I'd been fighting for the past 2 or 3 days now. multiple shotguns, rifles, attachments, medical supplies, and so much more. Well, it took almost 3 full days, but we've pushed through the checkpoint and seemingly cleared out the military base. The sun's about to set though, so I tried to find a place to hunker down in for the night and continued on in the morning. After another day of raiding the outpost, I almost f***ed myself after walking into a group of like 15 zombies, using another grenade to turn most of them into crawlers and barely escaping with my life. Sadly, I could not say the same for Elena. With her sacrifice, Francis was able to escape the military outpost and return to the research facility. At this point, I had more than enough gear to craft and place the 3rd module, meaning I only had 1 left to either locate or craft myself. I'm still convinced that what I need is back at the outpost, considering how much the research notes indicated that they were receiving bioreactor cores from them. My only holdup is that we just lost Elena, so one wrong move can end the run here. After spending a second night on the couch, I made plans to head back into the military outpost, determined to leave with a bioreactor core, or die trying. After a quick pit stop at the gas station, of course. I ran out of fuel just before reaching it, so I had to make the rest of the trek on foot, leaving the truck behind at an abandoned house. After refilling the gas cans, I made my way back to the house to spend the night, only to get assaulted by zombies as soon as I laid down. With the zombies dealt with, I slept a solid 4 hours before waking up to refuel the car. When that was done, I took some time to craft a bone needle and repair my bags and clothing with the excess thread that I had in the bed of the truck. And finally, after all of that, I was back on my way to the military outpost. The zombies are much more spread out than when I initially got here, but that's also a bit of a problem. Especially considering that I can't see more than like 3 or 4 tiles out. So I found myself constantly walking into horrid odds instead of playing it out patiently. Last time I was here, I focused more on the left and the right sides of the outpost, so this time, I just went straight ahead into the unknown. Just to the left of the reception desk, I found the armory. It came at a perfect time too, considering the sun was about to set, so I could just hide out back here and hope for the best. Holy shit. I never thought I'd find a bioreactor core in the f***ing armory. I was expecting to have to grind through the entire facility, but I'll take any win I can get right now. With the package secured, I took a cat nap in the corner of the armory, and then waited out my time until sunrise to return to the truck. Just kidding, I started moving at like 2 a.m. I was just too excited. And this was, admittedly, incredibly stupid of me, and almost got me killed and cost me my life multiple times. By sunrise, I'd realized that there was still a ton of metal sheets lying around, so I started collecting those as well, since I'll need 8 to craft another module. I also swapped to a rifle since I'd kitted it out with an 8x scope, an angled foregrip, and a suppressor. That evening, I managed to reach the truck and make it about halfway back to the research facility before running out of fuel and stopping at a house to rest. I have absolutely no idea how I survived this. Literally at 0.1 HP, but f it, I've got the power of God and anime on my side, I guess. Upon reaching the gas station again, I found it filled with zombies to the point where I was forced to leave the area without even turning off the generator. It's also winter and snowing out, and I'm cold all the time, which is slowly bleeding out my health bar. By the morning of day 32, I'd made it back to the research center and began crafting the last synthesizer module. With all 4 modules placed, the last thing on my to-do list is to find a way to power the building. For this step, I actually had to reach out to Ingeon, the developer of the game, for guidance. He told me that the only way, currently, to power the facility is with a portable generator, which have higher spawn chances in police stations, fire stations, and hardware stores. So, after another night of sleeping on the floor, I set out on my quest to find one. First, it was back to the gas station to refuel the generator, my gas cans, and the truck. Once I was stocked up on fuel, it was over to a clothing store. I'm tired of constantly having to light fires to stop myself from freezing to death, so the goal is to find enough warm clothing that I won't have to worry about it anymore. I don't know if it's just me or if it's actually the game, but it feels like the zombie pop is just growing every day. On the morning of day 34, dressed like SpongeBob and Patrick when they go to the tree dome during hibernation, I hit up a police station in search of a portable generator. I want to make it very clear, I have zero interest in any weapons or anything like that. I only care about finding a portable generator right now. Unfortunately, due to the debris in the way, I was stopped at a fortified house and had to manually remove all the junk blocking the road. I did end up trading in several bags in order to boost my trust with these guys, enough to trade for an assault rifle, all before spending all my trust levels on medicine. Instead of sticking around and clearing debris to the police station, I just went up and around to the hardware store, figuring I'd likely need to hit up both of these places anyway. It also gave me an excuse to try out the assault rifle. It's got 2 firing modes, semi-auto and full auto, but I kept it on semi-auto for now, though I'm sure I'll be trying out the alternative before the end of this run. No luck at the hardware store means it's on to the police station. This one was a dud too. There's a fire station up the road a bit, but it's right next to a dangerous place POI, so I'm expecting it to be hell. Three POIs searched, 3 misses. I did find a fucking fire truck though that I could drive, so that was fucking sweet. It's loaded with fuel, so I'm keeping a mental note of that for now and can always come back for it later. The truck gets almost 3 times better gas mileage though, so I'm gonna stick with that for now. I found another fire station in the top left corner near the military outpost, so I drove out there, and after circling the entire building, I found it literally 2 tiles away from my truck. Come on. After checking to make sure it was operable, I loaded it into my truck and began making my way back to the gas station, hopefully for the last time. With everything fueled up, it was back to the research center to see just what we could do. The only holdup at this point was just the fact that it cost damn near 4 action points just to move a tile because of how heavy my inventory is, with the generator almost doubling my weight. After placing the generator and getting it running, I was able to turn on the antigen extractor and begin collecting all the antigens needed for a cure at a rate of 1 head per turn. And I left the machine running for a few hours, refueling the generator to keep it from crashing. It looks like it's going to take 10 heads to fill 1 vial entirely, which I'm assuming would be needed to fill the glass dome things around the synthesizer. 12 heads fill each glass piece to 92%, so if my math is right, I'm going to need anywhere from 35 to 40 heads to fill this thing. Once the power goes out though, it destroys any of the antigens still in the extractor, so that's something we'll need to keep an eye out for. In the meantime, I upgraded the generator to hold more fuel and also use less. It took most of the night, but by the morning of day 39, I'd upgraded the fuel storage twice and decreased the full expenditure once. It may not seem like much, but I've gone from needing to refuel every 5 hours or so to every 13 hours, which is massive when you consider just how long I'm going to have to run the machine for. It was only after upgrading the generator 3 times that I realized I'm still holding 12 antigens in my inventory. Oops. As it turns out, each of the 3 tubes needs something different. One needs saline solution, one needs aluminum hydroxide, and the third needs the antigens. God, I'm so fucking stupid. On the bright side, all of this was still very necessary considering I learned that I don't need 35 to 40, but rather a whopping 100 zombie heads for the antigens. Luckily, I can hit up a pharmacy to find the saline and hydroxide that are needed for the machine, and after that, it'll just be headhunting zombies. I managed to get lucky and find another survivor at the pharmacy all the way in the southwest, so I spent the rest of day 39 talking with her in hopes of recruiting her to the team. Meet Kaylee. She sucks at combat, but has great observation skills. The goal now is to take the truck and start hitting up all of the pharmacies I can find. Along the way, I'll start collecting the heads from all the zombies we come across, which is a huge difference than just JFKing them. Kaylee is actually a huge asset though, as she has the economy driving trait, which nerfs the fuel consumption by 50%. Even with that though, we still ran into moments where we had to siphon fuel from a car just to power a generator in order to refuel said car. We also made stops at a local park in order to refill all of our water bottles before heading back on the road. For a relatively cheap material cost and 400 units of work, we can double the production of the antigen machine. So that became my goal. Talk about having the time sink of grinding this out for a bit of work up front. While Francis worked on upgrades, Kaylee added the rest of the saline and hydroxide, leaving 15% to go. I managed to finish the upgrade by the following afternoon and decided to go ahead and run it back, which bumps production rate up to 3. Naturally, this brings us halfway across the map to another electronics store to farm out more scrap pieces. All I needed now was one more wire. They don't seem to be found at electronics stores, but they can be farmed by cutting the fencing on the railroad tracks. This entire process took several days, but by 3 PM on day 44, the duo got started on the upgrade. We finished the upgrades just before midnight on day 44, and spent the rest of the night sleeping. Shocker. We're almost out of food though, and we still need 2 or 3 more units of aluminum hydroxide, so the goal is to hit up all the fortified houses and see what they've got available to trade. The first fortified house gave us a fish and a windbreaker to deal with the hunger and snow, while the second house gave us some more food and a jacket in return for 5 books and some water bottles. Everything was going so smoothly. Until we reached a gas station, where Kaylee was mauled, literally out of nowhere. This was a massive blow to the group, since we were relying on her driving skills to traverse the entire map and back without needing to refuel. Down to a one-man army yet again, Francis has to press onward. We need that hydroxide. I managed to find one at the next pharmacy, but I don't think that'll be enough, so I'm gonna keep looking for one more. In all honesty, this was actually a great way to grab a few extra heads for the machine. I wasn't sure if I was gonna get 3 antigens per head, or if it just consumed 3 heads at a time and speed up the process, so I wasn't gonna take any chances. With a second hydroxide vial looted, I burned through most of my fuel getting back to base, only to be greeted by more zombies as soon as I shut the car door. In total, I managed to round up 48 zombie heads on my travels, so I crammed them into the antigen extractor and turned on the generator to get them started. While that was doing its thing, I added the rest of the hydroxide to its chamber. All I need to do now is wait. Looks like the machine converts 3 heads at a time, so I'll still need around 45 more zombie heads to finish off the cure. When all was said and done, I had 60% of the antigens, meaning I'll need to round up another 40 heads to finish the thing off, along with some more fuel. Luckily, we're near a dangerous place POI, so I'll head back out in the morning and start clearing the area again. I did manage to find another survivor amongst the killing spree and started talking to them. Once I realized they were a police officer with level 4 combat, it was over. Naturally, our little chit chat was interrupted by some unwelcomed visitors. At one point, the dude got mauled, and I thought he died, only for him to pop back up the very next turn, so I guess he's good for now. Either that or he's bitten hiding it. Regardless, I was able to recruit that weird red guy from Smiling Friends to the group, just in time for sunrise. With the building cleared, we're up to 17 more zombie heads, but we're out of rags. With all the collected heads, I still need about 10 more, but I'm not sure Alan's gonna make it to the end. We'll just have to see though. So this is what happens when you bite off more than you can chew. Alan's dead, and Francis is dying of hypothermia. I was able to heal up enough to make it back to the truck, but I'm having to light fires anytime I stand somewhere. I have no idea how I managed to survive this looking back. I got incredibly lucky with the unlooted restaurant and just spammed rags and alcohol onto the fire to keep it warm enough to stave off hypothermia, and then used my shotgun to clear out any zombies that walked in the room. The next morning, I made my way back to the research facility and down into the basement where I tossed in the final heads needed to complete the vaccine. Alrighty, everything's been placed. Time to see what happens. Well, it may have taken 50 odd days, but it's a cool feeling to be able to say I've completed something that less than 1% of the player base has accomplished. This game is incredible, and I'm really hyped to do a few more runs with the new occupations I unlocked. There's so much detail that's hidden beneath the surface, like we didn't even get to do much with crafting or setting up a base camp or anything like that. As a reminder, from way back at the beginning of the video, there's 5 endings for you to discover, one of them being this, which is subsequently the most difficult to complete. I've got a link down in the description if this is a game you'd think you'd enjoy, so go check it out. Until next time though, I appreciate you all, stay safe, and thanks for stopping by.